Okay, welcome everybody. We're going to be doing a virtual author visit. We have Trace Conger, who is a popular author with our library. My name is Dylan Posa. I represent the Lebanon Public Library. Welcome, Trace.
Thanks, Dylan. Thanks for having me.
Hey, no problem. For anyone in the future who doesn't know what's happening right now as of this recording, we're currently in a lockdown situation. Trace, I know that you work quite a bit at the library. So how has this coronavirus situation affected your writing habits?
You know, it hasn't slowed me down that much. I mean, I'm really comfortable working from home. I do have to get out every now and then. So, like you said, I'll go to coffee shops, I'll come into the library just to have a kind of a change of scenery. The hardest part for me is being able to write while my family is here because, my wife is, she's working from home. My kids, are now been home for the last 4 weeks from school. So that's been a little, difficult to juggle. But I'm trying to stay busy and trying to stay motivated, just like everyone else.
That's great. So do you find that you are, I don't know if you've been on a schedule before, but do you find you have to kind of schedule your time a little bit more?
I do. What I used to do was I would write fiction in the morning until about lunchtime. And then I would, in the afternoon, I have some corporate clients that I write for. I'm also a freelance writer, and I also do some voiceover work as well. So kind of the afternoon was kind of reserved for that time. However, I've kind of had to shift things a little bit because my kids really don't get started until about 10 o'clock with their school assignments. And, they have some online learning and things like that. So it's definitely kind of shifted things a little bit. But, for the most part, I'm still getting the work done. It's just kind of finding, a different way to kind of squeeze everything in.
Yeah, I think we're all feeling some challenges.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I saw, before we get into your actual books by title, I saw that I think you just released some of your books in an omnibus edition. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes. So the Mr. Finn series, which was the first series that I wrote, is three books: The Shadow Broker, Scar Tissue, and The Prison Guard's Son. And the rights for those three books, the digital rights, so the ebooks, were acquired by a publisher out west, and then they've kind of packaged that together in an omnibus and made it available. I think right now they're running a promotion. I don't know if it's just last week and this week or if it's the whole month of April, but it's all three ebooks for 99 cents. So we're getting a lot of traction that way. But yeah, outside of the Finn series, I also have completed a new series, completed a new book. The first book in a new series, tentatively titled Dead Reckoning. And that's currently on the rounds with a few different agents who are reviewing it. It is complete, but it may still change before publication. So I'm excited about that. But that actually it's a spin-off of the Finn series. I've kind of capped that at 3 books. I may go back to it. I'm not exactly sure yet, but readers of that series will definitely see a familiar look and feel to the new series, and they might, see some familiar characters as well.
That's excellent. I know the last time you actually came to the library and talked, and thank you for that, by the way. The last time you came and talked, I believe you had just come out with your horror novella, which was a little bit of a departure from the Mr. Finn series. Do you want to talk about
Yes,
that?
yes, that was The White Boy. And for some reason, when I sit down to write a novel, my brain just gravitates to crime. And for whatever reason, when I write short stories, it tends to gravitate to horror. I've never written a short crime story, and I've never written like a novel-length horror story. But I started writing what I thought was going to be a short story called The White Boy, which was based on kind of a strange experience that my son and I had several years ago when he was either 3 or 4 when it happened. And I just kind of kept writing it and writing it and writing it. And before I knew it, it was, I think, about 20 to 22,000 words. So much longer than a short story, but, much shorter than what you would typically find in a novel. So I ended up just publishing it as a novella. And I have plans. I've actually started a manuscript that kind of ties into that, and it would be novel length, called Beyond the Sycamore Trees. It's currently up on the shelf because of some of the other responsibilities that I have with my publisher and getting some of the other work out. But I do hope to someday kind of go back to that. So that will be my first novel length horror story. So I am excited about kind of dipping my toe back in that water eventually.
Well, that's fantastic. We will definitely look forward to that. Do you, let's see, I know I was looking through some of your other books. So you've got the Mr. Finn series, which is the trilogy, and you've capped it out at that. You've got the horror novella. Also, you've got kind of an intriguing book on the list, Between the Lines. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes. So Between the Lines was an anthology that I was asked to participate in. I think there were about a dozen authors that are in that. And what was really unique about that project was each of the authors were given the first line and the last line, and they were all the same. So across all the dozen or so stories that are in there, they all have the same first and last line. And then so what we were kind of tasked with was, okay, how do you take a line that was basically given to you from someone else's imagination and turn it into a story? Which was a really fun exercise to do, and I was really excited about the story that I submitted. It was, I believe it's called The Fifth Patient. But it was a really cool project because then, after I actually saw the anthology and got my author contributed copies, I went through and read everyone else's. So it was kind of really cool to see where they went with just everyone having the same first and last line. And there were no constraints with regard to genre or length or anything like that. But it was kind of really cool how all the authors kind of handled it.
That's a pretty cool idea. Do you know, can you talk about where that came from?
Yes. So it was put together by an author, actually a Bram Stoker award-winning author and editor, Michael Nost, who is based in West Virginia and has several novels to his credit. And I think he's written a lot of kind of how-to writing books. I think he wrote one, may have even been for the Horror Writers Association, but it was like how to write horror, essentially. And so we had connected years ago, and he kind of brought the project to my attention and just some of the other authors that he knew and worked with as well. And it was really cool. I was really happy to be a part of it.
That's awesome. So you had alluded to the Mr. Finn trilogy. The digital rights are now held by a different publishing house, or is that right?
Yes, LMBPN Publishing out of I believe they're based in Las Vegas.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about sort of the pros and cons between you owning the rights to your books versus lending them to another publishing house?
Sure. So I'm kind of in an interesting part of my career because the first 4 books that I wrote were all independently published. So I published it under my own publishing imprint, and I owned all the rights to it. Financially, that's great because, all of the income that comes into that comes to me. The downside, of course, is that you're also responsible for everything. So you're responsible for cover design, you're responsible for editing, you're responsible for formatting, marketing, sales, developing your website, things like that, which, while I was really comfortable with the writing of it, I wasn't comfortable with anything else. So, those are situations where you have to, farm out different things to people who know that line of work much better than I do. So I kind of surrounded myself with a really good team. But LMBPN had approached me, I guess, about a year and a half ago, just to see if I still owned the rights and if I was interested in basically selling it to them. I think we're on a 3-year contract. And it was kind of an interesting situation for them because they are known for kind of sci-fi and fantasy titles. That's kind of where they started, but they were interested in branching out to more crime, thriller, and suspense. And I think I was one of the first few authors that they had approached to acquire some additional rights to kind of help them build their catalog around those genres as well. So it's been great. I mean, they've been great to work with. I don't really believe they made any changes to anything other than the covers. The original plan was to do the omnibus, which is out now, and then potentially kind of breaking it up and then reissue each title individually, kind of with new cover art and things like that. So it's been really fun working with them. And, so far it's been great because it's opened up my work on a much broader scale. I mean, they have, the ability to reach out with their, their readers and their newsletter lists and things like that, their current customers. They can reach a lot more people than I can. So it's been really beneficial, I think, for both of us, because now they've got a few additional titles for crime, thriller, and suspense that they can kind of, take to their masses as well.
That's cool. Do they are they interested in reissuing the books as physical books, or is it do they just do digital?
They specialized just in digital. That may change down the line. 2 of the 3 Finn books are available in audio. They're all available in ebook and paperback format, and the first 2 are in audio. So those are rights that I still own. We had talked about maybe partnering to produce the 3rd book in the Mr. Finn series, The Prison Guard Son, as an audio, because audio seems to be, really kind of ramping up now. I think it's been popular over the last few years, but it seems to just be getting more and more popular, than it has been year after year, which is great. So that's something that we're still considering. I don't know if that'll actually happen yet, but it is my hope at some point in the next year to get The Prison Guard Son out, because I've had a lot of people who don't necessarily read, ebooks or paperbacks, but really love the audiobooks. Mm-hmm. And so I'm kind of, haven't been able to close out the series for them because the last title in the series is still withstanding, but hope to fix that sometime soon.
So we were talking before I started recording. Trace is in his recording studio right now, his recording booth. Did you do the audio for your own books?
I did not, and I am smart enough to know when I am not good at something, and I am more than happy, no ego at all. I am more than happy to let someone else run with that, because I know they're going to do a much better job than I will. And I do voiceover, but the voiceover that I do is, much shorter. I mean, we're talking like 3 minutes, 3-minute snippets here or there. I do some narration for a few e-learning courses, and I think that might be 40 minutes, right? My books, they're like 6 to 8 hours finished, which is even, it's probably 3 times that to actually record it and produce it. So it's never been anything that I've ever been interested in at all. And I work with my narrator, Kyle Tate, who I think is fantastic. He's done the first 2 Finn books and is much better at it than I would.
And how did you end up, what does that look like, that business model? How do you audition readers for your audiobooks?
So I think there's a variety of ways to do it. I used a service called ACX, which is run by Amazon. And Amazon owns Audible, which is one of the big producers of audiobooks. And through ACX, you can basically audition voiceover talent. You can post the specs. Maybe you're looking for a male narrator, in this genre, this is my word length or whatever. And then from there, they kind of, partner you with someone, and then, they kind of make an open casting call. And then you might have 10, 20, 30 voiceover artists who, send you, let's say, the first chapter of your book. And then you can kind of pick and choose who you want to work with. And then, you work with them directly as far as figuring out what a fee structure is. Some, just work for a flat fee, which is usually what I do. I pay them outright and I own all the rights to the audio. Other models include like a revenue sharing where you might pay them a stipend, but then you both own, let's say, 50%. But I'm a big proponent in kind of owning as many rights as I can. So for me, it was just easier to kind of, pay it outright.
Yeah, this is really interesting, because I think a lot of people who might be interested in self-publishing, or who maybe think they have a book in them and just don't know quite how to get it out, I think talks like this are important, because it sort of highlights the different aspects of the business that maybe are sort of hidden behind some layer of opacity, maybe. So I know when the last time you came by and talked to us, we also talked about just the general sort of the the art of writing. So do you want to talk a little bit about your Mr. Finn series and maybe how that ties into being sort of how that ties into self-publishing the books?
Sure. Yeah, I think I'll touch on the kind of the craft and the art piece in a sec, but one of the things that I found out really quickly when I kind of got into independent publishing is you really have to wear two hats. I mean, you have to wear kind of the creative hat to actually write, and edit, an 80 to 100,000 word novel. But then as soon as you're finished with that, I mean, that business hat has to go on because, there are so many independently published titles out there that, you could spend a year of your life writing what could be a great book, but, you got to make sure people see it. And if no one can discover it, if you don't know how SEO works, if you don't know the importance of having a website and how to, something as simple as writing cover copy or back cover copy or, marketing copy for, like an Amazon webpage, because that's the stuff that's really going to sell the book. If you have a bad cover, doesn't matter how great the story is, everyone still judges a book by its cover and probably always will. So, if your cover is subpar, or if it doesn't tell your reader in a split second what they're going to get out of that book, no one's ever going to buy it. So I think, kind of the road is littered with, thousands upon thousands of independently published books that no one ever see. And it's even tougher for a series, I think, author, because let's say you write the first book in a series and then you move on to the second, right? Well, you still got to be writing the second, but promoting, the heck out of the first, because that's, if you can promote the first one, that's what's going to get people into, kind of into your funnel. And, a lot of those people, if you have a good first book, will, naturally move into the second, especially if it's a series. So, yeah, it's a tough business and there's a huge learning curve. The good thing about it is there are some fantastic resources out there, many of which are free. I mean, there's wonderful experts out there. I think Jane Friedman comes to mind. She used to work with, I think she was the editor-in-chief of Writer's Digest years ago. Different types of consultants, and a lot of these people put out, free information. So it's all out there. You just need to kind of look for it. But as far as the craft, I mean, what I always kind of aspired to do with my independent series was I wanted to put out a quality product that was indistinguishable compared to anything that was coming out of a big New York house, and that means, that means spending some money, that means spending, $800 on a cover, it's worth spending, it's about the same amount of money for editing, because you want someone who's not just going to go through and kind of, correct your misspellings, but you want someone to look at the bones of the story and say, hey, you opened up this thread back in chapter 2, but you never did anything with it. So why is it there? So you kind of want different people looking at it for different things. But the great thing is, those people are available. And there seem to be people out there that have fantastic backgrounds with traditional publishing houses that are now kind of going off and doing their own thing on a freelance basis. And you can really tap into some of that traditional publishing mindset so that you can, create a really high quality product, because that's so important.
That's really interesting. It seems like there's sort of a TaskRabbit marketplace out there for all of these different services that authors might need.
Yeah, there is. And one word of caution, though, there's a lot of snake oil out there, too, because I think a lot of people have been seduced by this idea of, oh, I can write a book and see it, my name, on the cover, and I can make a lot of money. And well, yes, that's, a definite possibility. For most people, that's not reality, and there are a lot of people out there who will take your money and won't necessarily give you the best product. So what my advice has always been is I've never bundled. I've never gone to one service that, offers to do everything for me for one price, because I want, who I think the best cover designer is. I want the best editor that I can afford. I want, the best formatter, those type of things. And I don't want to just kind of rely on one person to do all those things. So, my advice to anyone who's interested in it is, surround yourself with people who really know how to do it, or learn how to do it really well yourself. And I know there are people out there who can write edit, and produce a really good product because they've been doing it for years, and that's great. But I also know that's not me, and I don't want to invest so much time. I mean, I'm not a graphic artist by any, stretch of the imagination, and I don't know what sells on a cover. You've got people out there that they'll know that, well, this size font sells, or this color sells, or if you have a red cover, no one's going to buy it. Like, those are the things I have no clue about, and I'd much rather just rely on someone who already has that knowledge than me trying to go out and learn it on my own, which would probably take a few decades.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's really good advice too. The only reason I focus on a lot of these things is I know that when we do have authors come into the library, and you remember this as well, a lot of that question and answer is about the business side of it. So I know a lot of people do find that interesting.
Yeah.
But do you have any advice for anybody who is getting into the writing business? Do you, like, people who think they have a book inside of them? You kind of talked about the resources available and sort of how important structure is. Do you have any other advice you might give to people who want to write?
I think the most important thing is to just get out there and write it. And it sounds like it's something easy to do, but as anyone who's ever stared at a blank page, it's incredibly intimidating. When I sat down to write, because I had written several short stories before I sat down to write, a novel, and I was I'm a freelance writer, and a lot of the projects that I work on for clients, I mean, these can be several thousand words, which would be akin to maybe a short story, but it can be very intimidating to sit down and quote unquote write a book, right? But I think the key is to sit down, let yourself make mistakes. No one sees your first draft, right? And every first draft is horrible. I mean, even the people who make a lot of money doing this, their first drafts probably aren't that good, right? But it gets the story out there, it gets it down, and it's a lot easier to fix something that you already have than it is to just create perfection from scratch. So, break it up into little chunks. If it's, even if you can only write 300 or 400 words a day. I'm not a big person on, setting word limits. I try and write 1,000 a day. I mean, that's always kind of been what I shoot for. Sometimes I get it. Sometimes I fall short. But if you kind of have a goal in mind, I think that'll help keep you motivated, and just understand that it's not, a sprint. This is going to take a long time, and the first draft is not going to be good. It might be really, really bad, but it's okay. It is absolutely okay, because once you get the story out there, and that's another thing I would say too, the first draft should only be story. That's it. That's the only thing you should be worried about. Don't worry about structure. Don't worry about, if you're trying to adhere to like a certain number of story beats or something like that. Or, when we all talked about back in 5th and 6th grade, the rising action and the conflict and all that. Don't worry about all that with your first draft. Just get the story down. A lot of that stuff will happen organically anyway. But don't overwhelm yourself with too many things at once. Just focus on story. And then in the subsequent edits, then that's when you go back and you say, okay, how's my pacing here? Are there any areas that I don't even need? Are there any characters I've introduced but have no impact on the story whatsoever? And if they don't, why are they in there? Right? So those are some of the questions that you might ask as you're moving forward, but always start with the story, because that's the most important part.
Well, that's fantastic. Trace, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to speak with us, to give us a little interview, give the library a little content for people who can't come to the library right now.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to do it. I love working with you guys. The Lebanon Library has always been so supportive of me and having me in, and I love working with you guys. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And so we look forward to reading the next book.
It's out there. I finished the first draft of that new series, which is in the can but circulating with agents, and then I've started a standalone mystery thriller as well, which I'm really excited about because it takes place in a small town that's very similar to Lebanon, although I've called it Lincoln in the book.
Close enough.
Kind of a sly little nod there, but I'm really excited about that too. So a lot of things in the work, and just kind of using this strange time, to really kind of focus in on some of those projects and just keep cranking.
Fantastic. Hey, thanks a lot. We'll stop this now, and thank you everyone for watching and listening, and we'll see you soon. Stay safe.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you so much, Trace.